Today we have a very jam-packed episode because we had a very jam-packed newsletter. Very technical leaning, the newsletter this week, just because of the way the cookie crumbled, let's say. We're going to talk about an operator in the UK who's now got 100,000 VO customers. We're going to talk about vibe coding. Is it good? Is it bad from a kind of technical perspective? We're going to look at a rebrand over in the UK as well. Then we're going to dive into my recent piece about context debt. And then we're going to round it all up with an example of for building co-working, the trend from Australia now present in Europe. We'll dig into that. So quite a jam-packed episode.
Welcome to another This Week in Co-working discussion.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the This Week in Co-working podcast feed. I am your host, Hector, and I am joined today by my guest co-host, James Shannon over at Ascensus. James, how are you today?
Very good, thank you, Hector. Good to be here again, and hello, everyone.
Always great to have you here on the podcast. This week's episode, newsletter, etc., is all sponsored by the Elumo team at Ascensus. So, James, thank you for making this all possible this week.
My pleasure.
So, just so folks maybe think this is the first time they're checking into the episode or the first time they're crossing paths with the Ascensus, which I doubt. What is the Elumo product and who is it for?
Yeah, so Elumo, we went out to solve a big pain point we saw in Flex operator sites, which was the most in demand spaces, the bookable spaces, meeting rooms, phone booths, and so on, were often the least revenue captured. So the classic question we ask the customers, how busy are your meeting rooms? And it's always 80, 90%. But then you ask how much revenue do you capture from those rooms, and it's often low teens, if it's over 10%. And that's a big pain point. The CFOs want more offices, less meeting rooms, then capture more revenue per square foot. The members want more meeting rooms because you can never get a meeting room. Everyone wants high revenue per square foot and happy members. And so we try and solve that problem. Traditionally, operators have to choose between revenue and experience, put locks on the door for revenue, but then members can't get in quickly. And so Elumo really aims to solve that by converging booking and access into a single product. And we work with whatever you've got. Could be Office R&D, could be Nexus, could be Yardi, could be Census Operate, whatever platform you're using for bookings. We sit on the front of that and give you this tap to book experience out the door with Apple Wallet that allows you to book, pay, and open in sort of under half a second. So solve the experience, capture the revenue, keep the CFO happy and the members happy at the same time.
And we last time you were on the podcast, we actually did a live demo of this, so I'll drop those links in the podcast as well. Go and check that out. It is really seamless. It is really fluid. It also looks great. I would put one in my house if I could, but my kid would just play with it because it looks that cool to play with. But one thing I did want to kind of also highlight is last time I spoke to you, you did mention that you'd refined your pricing a bit, making it a little bit more accessible to operators of all sizes.
So, like many access-orientated products, we started out with sort of per user, per credential pricing, which didn't fit so well in our industry, which, there's a lot of moves, adds, and changes in Flex, and a per user pricing is tricky to budget for. So we've just gone really simple now, which is, we're all about generating revenue per bookable space or a meeting room. So we now price it at a fixed price per room per month. And this means that pretty much if you can uplift the revenue capture of each meeting room by 1 hour a month, which we think is very conservative, given that most meeting rooms are probably only capturing 10% of the revenue, then Elumo pays for itself. So we kind of wanted to get it to a no-brainer ROI story. So really simple, fixed price per room per month, put Elumo on the door, and we even have an OpEx only pricing now. So you can actually build the hard cost of the hardware into that subscription. So we try to make it as easy to consume as possible. We even have wireless handles now that make even the lock much easier to retrofit on an existing meeting room door.
I love that. And what I'm going to challenge the Ascensus team to do, or at least the Elumo division of Ascensus, is get us some stats, get us some numbers around like 100%. How many people have installed this, what is that uplift, and I would love to dig into those because I completely agree that this is a brainer because I've been to many co-working spaces where they do have access and you have to call the community manager to get into the meeting room so I would love to see what those numbers look like. The next time you're on the podcast, we can dive a little bit deeper.
We're at a pretty exciting point now where we've got multiple sites live in all three of our regions, Australia, London, and stateside. So I think probably by GWA, we'll have some good numbers on those. And of course, tracking that data from the day we installed to sort of a trend or 3 months down the road, it's pretty easy now. So I think that's obviously a compelling tool for us as well to communicate the value.
Absolutely. So we'll either get you back on the podcast for that, or we'll just make an undercurrents on meeting room revenue, and we'll kind of dig into that with all of your operators. So let's dig into this week's newsletter. You're king. So top of the newsletter, if you are following along, you can head to thisweekincoworking.com and click on week 28 of 2026. You can also subscribe to the newsletter there and join over 1,300 executives who are getting the email version every Thursday, or subscribe over on LinkedIn at our Crib Notes version, where around 1,800 middle management team members are getting the Crib Note version of our newsletter. Both are completely free, so go over, pick your poison, and join in and follow along as we go. So we're going to start off with a celebration this week, primarily a celebration of Hoxton Mix's 16 years in business, a fantastic operator. If you've never come across them, I think one of my earlier businesses was definitely based there as a virtual office client. So totally understand their product. They were one of the earliest to move in and offer completely e-commerce driven DIY VO services in the UK. So huge hat tip to Chris and the team there for doing just amazing work over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and they're just down the road from us, Silicon Roundabout, as they like to call it in London, and the local version of Silicon Valley. Been around pretty much as long as a bit shorter than a census. And for me, the great thing about the story is, I love the fact that it was founded by engineers to start with, but then it's kind of such a, I guess, I don't want to say unsexy, but virtual office has been around forever as a product. But the fact that automation and AI is now allowing that product to scale at that sort of at software scale is pretty cool. And productizing it to that level, it just shows you that any good product that's in demand, you can apply automation and AI at scale to, even if it's a product that's been around for many years, and build a great business out of it. I also love it because it's physical meets digital, which is kind of
definitely have discussed that overlap with you in the past. I'm definitely going to have to kind of do like a montage of all the different times we've talked about this over the years, because we've definitely talked about that overlap many times. I also love this story because, as you mentioned, it is this like API-fication of physical assets, right?
Yes.
What I loved about what Chris shared is that the reason they got to 100,000 actively served businesses as customers, if you want to extrapolate that at the average, virtual office price on their website, it's pretty healthy revenue right there. But they've also been able to do it by partnering up with other networks, accounting firms, fintechs, challenger banks, these kind of entities who have loads of people who lead virtual offices. And it's definitely a strategy that we've been talking about with a lot of operators, both in the UK and worldwide, is you don't have to go directly to the customer, right? Whole conversation, I think there's a piece from Alliance in the newsletter this week as well, talking about the fact that, aggregators, stop thinking of them as kind of lead gen, start thinking about like the distribution networks. And we've obviously seen it with the internal aggregators in our industry, but going out to like the local chamber of commerce, going out to accountants, going to lawyers, registered agents, and getting them to utilize your spaces or your addresses. It's just a great revenue driver. So I love this story for so many reasons. I'm glad that we both agreed to kind of start on with this one. It is an absolute success story, and I wish them all the best for the next 16 years and to celebrate when they pass 1 million businesses served. It's just inevitable. Chris, if you do listen to this, I would love to see that graph over time that the SaaS companies love to share. How long did it take you to get to 1,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000? Alrighty, so we did mention the trip words for this year: AI, automation, etc. Another big trend that we're seeing in almost every co-working executive boardroom is this impact around vibe coding. Where does it fit in? Should you be vibe coding things? Should you not? Should you disable or block your aspiring teams from using vibe coding? There was a post from Office R&D this week basically looking at the pitfalls of forgetting that when you vibe code a solution, you are now the product owner. You are the support team, you are the integrator, you're the database maintainer, you are all of these things in order to, avoid paying a small subscription fee to a platform who has this all built in. And it's definitely a conversation I keep having with operators. Do you own, build, vibe, or rent? And it's a very interesting, I have very, very deep opinions on this, and I am very much one of those folks who are think out the objective before you think about the action. But for yourself, James, as a technical leader, what What are your thoughts?
Right. I mean, build versus buy has been around forever, but obviously this has really kind of accelerated the build side of that equation, and the results and the ability to create is intoxicating, I think, for those that experience it for the first time. It's kind of what a lot of engineers feel when they start out engineering and build something for the first time, but it probably takes them months rather than hours. But now anyone can now create something. And I think, yes, there's huge, as with anything that's intoxicating, it's dangerous. And you need to think carefully about the business impact of it. Because if it's a personal project for fun, make a few bucks as a side hustle, happy days, you've got to think about the impact on your business. So continuity, what if it goes wrong? How do you support it? How do you grow it? And so on. So for me, the biggest benefit of vibe coding is all around being able to communicate ideas. So traditionally, people have seen, I want something that looks like this or something that looks like that. So I think it's a really powerful tool for prototyping, for communicating ideas, particularly from non-technical to technical people. And then for technical people then to pick that up. And we've used that a huge amount in our team now, product owners, prototyping stuff in Claude Design, and us being able to just hand it off to the engineering team, and just missing out that whole kind of cycle of iteration. But yeah, I mean, I've seen lots of C-levels, very dangerous. Now think they don't need an engineering team anymore, and very quickly figure out they do. So,
I mean, it's definitely that, but there's also the other side of it, right? Of which is AI has been subsidized for almost now,
100%.
right? And so, yes, I completely agree that there is that magical moment of an idea is now a thing. It's definitely what pulled me into coding at 13,
Right.
way too many years ago. It's what got me addicted to kind of building these and putting it in front of people on the internet and having them play with it and then having to figure out how to fix things. There's definitely something there, and I do love that shortened that process.
Yeah.
But it's also getting to a point now where we've seen horror stories over the last 3-ish months of Uber spending their entire year budget in the first quarter and this is like highly technical teams, right? We've seen stories in indie hacker groups where they've run up $30,000-$40,000 bills because they didn't cap their token usage. And then we're seeing like, okay, this is great if the price is cheaper than hiring expert developers or experts, internal teams. And it's not only on the vibe coding side, it's also on the support side. It's also the growth of AI agents in all of our stacks.
Yeah.
Who is going to be paying for that utilization as your traffic goes up? We go back to your change in pricing model.
Yeah.
The tradition was to charge per person. Access was shifted away from that because the utilization-based pricing just doesn't make sense on a fixed asset.
Yeah.
But we're getting to a point now where the utilization cost of running technology, we're seeing with Salesforce changing their pricing, with HubSpot changing their pricing.
And a consumption.
What is it? Exactly. So when all of your tech becomes consumption-based price or priced on consumption, how are you going to quantify that, qualify how much you're spending on every agent? And I just want to like really highlight that. I have this conversation with many executive teams. And they're like, we just AI everything. And I'm like, you cannot AI everything when you're building a zero trust system. Right? That you do not know what the underlying cost is going to be. And even when you do, are you going to be willing to go from, let's say, a US-based or a UK-based or a European-based LLM to a China-based LLM in order to bring your costs down? What is the implications of that long term there? And so, there's still a lot more to this. It's a very meaty subject. And I think Officer R&D did a really good job this week of kind of touching the surface of it.
Especially in a case study as well, rather than just kind of a thought piece. Actually take a real case study of a customer that tried this and then what were the pitfalls of that? Because I think that really resonates. We can talk about it all day and talk about the risks of it, but actually a customer seeing another customer who tried it and like, okay, these guys, there's some real data here that proves that the risks involved.
Absolutely.
And I think we're also seeing a lot of my team have been using it for a long time, as I'm sure you have as well. But we're now seeing business teams and operations teams getting more into it now and starting to find the pitfalls of you need to eyeball the output. We human eyeball every line of code AI creates. I mean, you can't just let it do its thing. I mean, it speeds you up and it's a great productivity tool, but there's a reason you need a human in the loop, and that doesn't stop at code. It stops at Dex. It stops at everything AI creates, including Vibe created tools. So
absolutely. I mean, we definitely have a AI COO at Syncaroo, and it's called Pinky, brain of our business. And even with what she does and what she surfaces to us, there's also times where we're like, this customer, they mention the same thing, but they're not the same, right? And so you really still have to have someone manage that
100%.
but On the flip side, the productivity side, the fact we can stay so lean, we can support hundreds and hundreds of locations all around the world, different time zones, still deliver on the deadlines, would not be possible without AI. We would have had to throw more bodies at it.
100%.
So I totally get where operators are like, well, why am I paying this much for software or this much for operations or this much for technology when I can just vibe code everything? I get it. I'm not here to be like, no, don't use AI. We use it every day. This whole podcast, this whole newsletter business is run on the back of a bunch of AI systems. But think through the outcome and then work backwards. Let's jump back to the UK with a exciting rebrand. Led Workspace has now become Elementa Workspace. Kate Cox shared that they're not only rebranding, but they're also repositioning to focus more on science at work and kind of build the brand and their approach around how the work environment shapes focus, energy, performance. And it's kind of stepping away from the traditional, we have good desks at good places at good prices, and are going to be releasing a full case study we'll share as well. What do you think about this rebrand?
Yeah, I mean, we've had Landmark as a customer for over a decade now, so we know them very well. And it's great to see them evolving, generally across the landscape of many of these operators who've been around for a decade or more. It's not, as you say, it's not about the coffee or the sit-stand desks or the space itself anymore. It's about how do you differentiate yourself in the modern flex hybrid world where there needs to be more than just good coffee and a sit-stand desk to get people into the office. It's people come in to collaborate. They want to come in. And I think that people are buying into, actually, my operator is thinking about how to make this space better for collaboration. I think everyone talked about it post-pandemic, but now people are actually putting their money where their mouth is and saying, we've got some science behind this. And this is why our space is better. And I think it really land and resonate with customers. And it's great to see Landmark sort of leading from the front again.
Yep, I completely agree with that. And as you were speaking, it definitely resonated with me why they focus so heavily on science. And it is that. It sounds more data-driven. Exactly. It sounds more scientific. It sounds more thought through than often
more
beautiful space. Yeah, exactly. That's it. More intentionality. Most co-work, it's like beautiful. It's fantastic to look and you get that aura of like, this is art, not science. So they're kind of shifting on the fact that, hey, this is beautiful, but there is intentionality behind it. So absolutely love that rebranding. Cannot wait to see this roll out across their portfolio as well. So we're going to jump over to Germany, key topic. We saw news out of 1,000 satellites over in Berlin. They've opened a new location there, but instead of following the traditional European playbook of you have a floor plate, we take the floor plate, we either figure out a deal on that floor plate, or we just rent it and then chop it up and re-rent it. They're following a trend, or they're stepping into a trend that we've been following for a couple of months now, popularized over in Australia, of what we call full building flex. So the co-working space operator takes the floor, but then amenitizes the rest of the building and then provides concierge, meeting room, additional auxiliary services to the rest of the landlord. It's got a slightly different twist on this in the fact that the operations of the entire building will now be taken over by 1,000 satellites. So instead of them just managing the floor, they're now also managing the entire building, as well as earning that accrual, that existing rent from the existing tenants, and just shifting over as becoming like the management. It's very, very popular here in the US to have management companies of residential buildings who just take over and switch over the accounts and then they manage the building. So it's a very interesting evolution that we're seeing happening and play out right now in Berlin. I know that Ascensus has been deeply involved with projects like this over in Australia. There's a lot of technical things that go into it and a lot of operational things. But do you think we'll see more of this spread across Europe and maybe here in the US?
I do. I think we've been seeing different flavors of this, as you say, have been evolving over the last 5 years or so in different regions, landlords and operators finding different ways to work together through management agreements or JVs or just subleases or whatever. But yeah, we've seen it work really well in Australia. I think I met Marcus actually from 1,000 Satellites at Juicy. Very ambitious. Great to see a European operator really going after it and a forward-thinking landlord to work with. So yeah, really exciting to see how they can take a landmark building in a capital city and as a showcase for how this could work in Europe. So because I think, Europe's been a little bit slow to bounce back, maybe got slightly smaller buildings than some of the bigger cities in US and London. So it's really great to see a European city kind of, get some profile around more modern ways that landlords and operators can work together.
And I love that because I remember we did a bunch of interviews at Coworking Europe. But what we found that, especially for the German-focused operators, is there was so much red tape and legalese that they had to go through in order to think about things like management agreements. So that someone is pioneering and adding a new twist on this sets precedent. Germany is a very precedent-driven market, much like the UK. Seeing play out is a good sign for everyone in and around Germany who are looking for new innovative ways to roll out this model. Of course, very different role base compared to the US. Just even the data side, who owns, who controls, who's a controller, who's not. Just that thought process from a tech perspective. I've spent a lot of time on the tech side of operations with operators. Must have been a very heavy lift. Once it's been done, it is now. And so we're going to keep seeing, I hope we're going to keep seeing more and more innovation around business models with this rollout in Berlin.
Yeah, and of course we see it interestingly from the Elumo perspective, because we generally got perimeter security, we've got access into the suites, and then you've got obviously meeting rooms and bookable spaces. And with these more increasingly operational models that are not just base building and forgotten about, there are now operators coming in and say, well, we want a street to seat member experience with one credential, not one for the turnstile, one for the suite, and one for the meeting room. So, a lot of these more innovative models are starting to drive that experience as well, which obviously we're at the heart of and really excited to see what we can do.
Yep. And love it. And we definitely love collaborating with you guys when we have these large projects. But you have multiple, what we call identity layers. Right. And how does that all play together? And that brings you said the magic word map. So that's going to jump us into the last story. It's a story that I wrote. It's called about a trend that I've been following through these executive discussions and leadership sessions that I've been running. And it's this idea that for a very long time, we did understand that the tech you chose does create technical debt. These are the things that don't really work so well. That Excel sheet that is kind of connecting systems that should have been integrated. The inability for someone to open a specific app in a specific browser. These kind of elements that really slow down productivity. You can feel them, you can see them, you know that they're hitting your business and hitting your productivity. But there was this hidden cost, this hidden debt that we kept picking up from when we were speaking to a lot of operators. And it's what I call the context debt. This is the idea of, even if you have the world's best documentation and you can write down how the thing works, why it was built, how it was built, when it was built, what it does, the decisions of why specific things were decided along that process is often lost. It's oftentimes just a conversation at a water cooler. It's someone popping their head into your office and being like, is it cool if I give that customer a discount? Why did we choose this vendor? Why did we not sync this one account? Why is this specific person got 3 user accounts in our system? This level of context is very often lost. And especially so as we're seeing a lot more mobility in people's careers in our industry, moving from one company to another, lots of vendors, this traditional project-based approach, including vibe coding, where you kind of build the solution once, implement it, and none of the context around the decisions that were made during that process, that those prompts that you gave the vibe coding system disappear once the product goes into action. And so a lot of the times we're seeing operators come and they're like, oh, we want to change systems, we want to improve. And the thing is, when you try to make change and you haven't accrued or accounted for that gap in context, that's when the interest hits you like a truck. That's when you're like, well, why can't we change the system? Why is it taking us 6 months to implement the first change? Because you have to now go back, just like with technical debt, and kind of fix what was broken before you can make change. I know you read this article as well. What did you think? Agree, disagree?
100%. It really landed with me because, my team, when we really started motoring with AI from an engineering standpoint, we found that our velocity, our productivity was increasing so fast that we were delivering a lot of product and delivering, but there was less documenting of why we were doing or made certain decisions. Could be an architectural decision, could be a business decision, could be a strategic decision, but you lose those. And then in 6 months' time or 9 months' time or a year's time, someone says, why did we do that? We were working so fast, you kind of lose the why. And so for me, now we're kind of a standing practice, which is Granola runs in every meeting. We capture key decisions, which are documented and archived, and we also capture actions, which become tickets in linear. So it's all about trying to capture the speed of AI, but not losing the context of decisions made on the fly, because we can make decisions so fast and action them now but the context is often lost in that speed. So yeah, this 100% landed with me because, it used to be that, well, if we got our source code repository, that's our institutional memory. But actually, it's just as important to know, especially if AI wrote a lot of that source code, maybe there's not human comments in there, so we need to have the why, so that whoever's maintaining that product, going forward in a year or two's time, understands why certain decisions were made. And I think you can then translate that, in your words, to kind of the business scenario, which was, well, why is that contract that way? Why did we price that customer that way? And the same tools can be used to capture it institutionally, right? Capture every meeting granola, store it somewhere, use Notion, whatever tool you want to use, capture the why, because it's the why that will bite you. In the same way that technical debt bites engineers in 2 years' time, it's the why that will bite businesses in 2 years' time. So 100% agree with it.
Great to hear they resonate with you. I did hear from a bunch of CIOs and exec teams all around the world who came back and they're like, yes, turn this into a series, dive deeper down into this. So I'm definitely going to do that. And I'll keep
And how
your
to solve
newsletter.
it, right? How to solve for it, how to mitigate
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
And we definitely are helping a bunch of operators, especially like 5+ location operators where they have distributed teams. How do you build a great, what we call context graph, while knowing that you're hiring highly competent people who will get shit done without complaining? And because they're not complaining and they're just getting things done, you're missing both technical and context debt
You're just
in those
creating
interactions.
Exactly.
Exactly. Always a pleasure hanging out with you. Thanks again for geeking out with me here on the newsletter. I will see you again, hopefully soon in Europe or here in the US, wherever we will cross paths again. Is there anything that you want to tell people to check out before we hop out for today?
No, I mean, you can always go and check us out at Elumo.com. Plenty of exciting stuff coming. We've got a special launch coming at GWA, an exciting new feature, which we'll save for that. But yeah, it's an exciting couple of months ahead. Have a great summer, everyone. And catch us at Elumo.com.
Great. Thank you very much, James. We'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me.